Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Carlton People. We are talking at the end of a 7-game winning streak. We hope it continues. I've got Ali with me. You're going to meet him. I'm going to meet him. Let's do it. Ali, hello. Welcome to Carlton People, mate.
G'day, Terry. Thanks for having me, mate. It's one of those long-time listeners, first-time, engagers. So happy to be here.
I'm a long-time engager with your Twitter account. And we've actually, this is the first time we've met. We spoke for 5 minutes just prior to recording. So I'm just as interested, if not more, because to meet you and understand you and your story. Because I know you're a photographer. I know you've done some work with the club in the past. I know you've got when you can sense someone's got a bit of wit about them.
Thank you. I'm assuming you mean me,
or I mean you.
Not going to backhand the compliment. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I must admit this isn't the first time I met you. I did see you from afar at a training session, so I was like, "Hey," but I didn't say hi. But yeah, no, I've been aware of Blue Abroad for the last few years, and in the last couple of years, really jumped on the content bandwagon and really appreciated what you and Pom and Paolo and Lectog and all that bring. So it's really heightened my experience as a fan. And yeah, I think I've been involved in the Carlton social sphere for a long time.
Glad to hear it, man. Well, I need to know. We need to know. How did you become a Carlton supporter? What's the story?
Well, my family are migrants from Afghanistan, so I wasn't born into a Carlton family. In fact, my dad doesn't really like sport at all, and so that's not an ancestor of mine. That's just an old that's a poster by Peter Drew. It's an Afghan Camelier, and that's what I sort of relate to. But I think around 1990, I was born 1990, and around 1995, I probably bandwagon as a kid. But I think I've said this before, and actually to Stephen Silvani as well himself. I said when I was 5 years old, I just thought that he and Kernahan were Afghans because they looked like my uncles. And so when I saw them on TV, I was like, oh, okay, that's the Afghan team. I'll just follow them. And sure enough, the greatest winning team of all time proceeded to not win anything directly after I followed them. And so it's been a tumultuous ride, but one that I probably as a teenager, wasn't the most fervent supporter, but I think perhaps probably after Juddy came in, I started really obsessing about Carlton, and I was a frequent training session goer, VFL goer. I've been to that many cold VFL days at Preston and Carlton, and I've been through a lot. I've always said that with every Carlton membership should come like a voucher for therapy, but we're reaping the benefits of it now. 7 in a row, as you said before, and it's a good time to be a bagger. And finally, my friends who all know me as a long-suffering Carlton fan are supporting me and my team as well. So it's a good time to be a Blue.
Yeah, that's interesting because most of the time when I do this, it's, there's a family involved and dad or mum was a supporter or a brother, cousin, whatever. So you just by stroke of, I don't know, chance, luck, God, something, you found Carlton on your own.
Yeah, I think what we all know about Carlton is it's like we've got the best jumper. Everyone looks better in blue. Our history is one to admire, and the more an outsider looks at Carlton, it's probably the most attractive club. Maybe I made a really wise choice at 5 years of age, but it was probably bandwagoning. But what's kept me at Carlton is that sense of heritage, and I really like what the club stands for, and I like that it's a club known for its diversity. It's a club that expects success, and even though we haven't really reached that, my identity as a Carlton supporter is really important to me.
Yeah, right. What's your earliest memory as a supporter, like a game or moment as far back as your memory goes?
Yeah, well, it's funny because I'm actually like the only Carlton supporter in my whole family. My whole family are Collingwood supporters, which is yeah. So my earliest footy memories are going to Collingwood games, and I think that sort of really hardened or galvanized my Carlton support because I was in behind enemy lines, and I really made that a thing because I felt like I wanted to stand out from my family. I'm the only Carlton supporter in the village, but I think it was a real identity thing for me to be like the Carlton supporter amongst my family. That's my earliest, literally my earliest memory was going to Collingwood games, oddly enough. And then, more recently, with my mates, as I was able to go, to games myself, and it was just being with mates from school and just general life, seeing them.
Yeah, right. Did you latch on to players early on? I mean, you mentioned Sauce, you mentioned Kernahan, but did you have any heroes early on that got you going week to week?
Not so much heroes, but just players that I loved watching, because, like I said, I got really obsessed with Carlton, but also just footy in general. So I was watching under 18 games and seeing players like Chris Yarran come up, and I even I got really interested in the draft, and there was players that I liked that went to other clubs, and I remember really liking Tim Membry, but now he haunts my dreams. But players like Matthew Watson, Luke Mitchell, and Cam Giles, and just following them as they come up, because they were like just coming to the club, and I was just getting like really into the art of football. I think I really just enjoyed the development piece and seeing the club grow from where we were in the doldrums to hopefully get back to where we were once upon a time.
What have you learnt being a Carlton supporter? That's a very broad question, so let me narrow it down. What have you learnt about the art of actually building a list and a team?
Building a list and a team, I think. I think what I've learned is that this is probably really translatable to. I've learned a lot of transferable skills from football that into life. Actually, you can have as much talent in the world as you can have, but if you don't have proper role models, the ability to develop, the ability to work hard, you won't achieve anything. And I had times where I was following Carlton through my early 20s and that, and you might go through some struggles. And I think I even remember like Brendan Bolton used to say, "Get comfortable being uncomfortable." And I remember as a 20-year-old, I was like, "That's such a great saying." I use that in my life like day to day as well. And that actually, I credit his words, and which he probably took from somewhere else, but hearing it from him, that was a saying that I really clung to throughout my formative years. And I think footy teaches you a lot about mateship and being a cog in a greater wheel and that kind of thing. So I think you have to learn through hardship and dealing with hardship. I think as Carlton supporters, we've actually had trauma. Like I think some of the best mates you make are like through shared trauma. So it's also that piece of being able to take the piss out of something that's a bit difficult, and I think we've all learned that, and it makes us better. We can deal with things better in life having been a Carlton supporter, I'd say.
I couldn't agree more. So for us growing up, I think we have the message of what Carlton is based off the generation prior, and the message passed down to me was like, we are Carlton, we are great, we are the best, 16 premierships, greatness, excellence, we demand this, we demand that. I look back now, and I'm not saying that now that we've won 7 in a row, it's done, we've done the job, but I look back now and I'm like, the whole thing needed to be humbled one way or another. And fortunately or unfortunately, I'll say fortunately, we lived through every moment of the humbling. And my theory is that it's going to hold us in good stead moving forward.
Yeah, I think we were so successful for so long. The people who were at the age to run the club had just been, accustomed to being pig-headed. And we saw that in, something that happened in around the 2000s, which I won't mention, and the subsequent running of the club into, she'll be right kind of thing, and not putting in the hard yards that other AFL clubs did. So I think, that this prolonged humbling will hopefully reap us, long-term benefits. Because, I think even after round 23 last year, we kind of just expected us to rebound. But now I've learned from that experience as well. Like, if you have heartbreak with bad form. It's just going to continue in bad form unless you have like a great turnaround. So yeah, I think it's a very slow build,
No
which
doubt.
has been necessary.
I look at the previous rebuild to this one, and I think we went midfield out, whereas this one we went key position in. How have you seen this group compared to its predecessor?
Yeah, I think what I really love at the moment is the football department and the recruiters are prioritizing, mentality over talent as well. I think we always had talented players, but then the players that we put around the fringe were also flashy. But now we see really great kids like Ollie Hollins and Corey Durden and even rookie picks. They have such a good mentality and they're strong minded. Whereas top first round picks of yesteryear, if they faced a bit of hardship, would have gone in their shell and just deteriorated into second rate footballers. But these guys, they faced super hardship and through Torquay nudie runs and piss ups, they've managed to come out the other end, at least for now. And they have not only the talent, but what Nick Austin and the crew and Agresta and Paul Brodie have really focused on is that Sydney style and Geelong style of recruiting where we're picking like mental beasts. Like I think that's the most important part.
Yeah. What would you say your biggest high and your biggest low has been as a supporter?
Biggest high, definitely 2013. Weight handball to Judd in the pocket, just going nuts on the wing. I remember that Shane Tuck tap down to Bryce Gibbs was like right in front of me, and just proceed. Like I was with my mate and we were down at half time. I was just like, "Fuck no! How can we do this?" And my mate, who's just like an absolute oracle, like just some guys have annoying footy IQ. They just know everything that's going to happen. And he goes, "Mate, we're going to kick 12 in a row. Just watch us run over these guys. These guys are pretenders." And sure enough, like that was everything that happened in 2013. That was probably the best experience of the footy I had. I was there at 2011 against Essendon as well. That was great fun, but I think 2013 was special, and probably that roar, which I'm going to pretend was Carlton fans when the teams came out.
Yeah.
Definitely not 70,000 Tiger fans. That was something else to experience. Did you ask about a low as well?
Yeah, there've been plenty, so it's going to be hard to pick one out. But is there one that
definitely
really last year? Yeah, fair.
Yeah, that was like losing a relative. Because I had invested so much, like built up so much towards finals, and I intimately know like all the players on the list. I've seen them from the draft, and even our most senior players, I've seen them from when they were like 18, and to see them like fail so theatrically and comically for supporters, it was literally like what I imagine a great trauma would be, and I just couldn't be happy for like months. I forgot happiness, but it was kind of weird. I was once again doing the Schadenfreude thing after the St Kilda win, and I watched the guy who was on your pod recently, Saints TV, and he was just recording in his car in a dark car park, and people were commenting like, "My wife's angry at me because of my behavior." I was just like, that's sad and funny, but also may have been me at times.
Well, why couldn't it have just been? It couldn't have been like a 16 or 17 point loss. It had to be 1 point. Had to be a kick in the final 90 seconds. It had to be that way. It had to be in a manner where the week before we were just there, and we get we get our hearts broken. It was almost like a rehearsal for the real heartbreak. And there's something about the club. It's never straightforward. It's always got to be the most dramatic on either end. It feels.
Yeah, you literally could not script that any worse for us. Like that was such good material for opposition supporters. If you look at it, if any other club was doing it, I would just anytime they say something, screenshot with that. Like it's A grade material. Just nuke any debate. But yeah, I think AFL in the last like few seasons has been like I'm never comfortable. I haven't been comfortable during watching a match for maybe 5 years, maybe more. Yeah, I just can't recall being comfortable with this side, and I'm finally getting to that point where even this week when we were behind, I kind of expected us to have a turnaround, which is I think we're in a really good period at the moment.
Yeah. So, we're filming this just before the Melbourne game, round 22, which means we have watched the season so far. This video will sit here forever. So, how have you reflected on what's happened so far, and how do you absorb it in your mind?
In terms of this season alone,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think we still haven't seen this until we actually make finals. I won't really call it 100% success, but I'm happy that we've had this. I think this turnaround in form and the commitment to play a pressure game and really go back to being confident footballers, because it's really those intangible things that set you apart in professional sport. Like all other teams are doing the same amount of training, doing the same amount of skills. At the top end, the draft, the talent pool that you have in each side should be around the same. This is probably the first time that I'm seeing like a steely resolve in the team, and I think that's the first time I've seen the club be humble as well.
Yeah.
We haven't got that Sticks Kernahan, where Carlton fuck the rest kind of mentality. It's no, if we don't do if we don't do the givens, we won't get to the point where we want to be. And Voss has really validated everything he said with our recent form. And even if we miss out finals again, I think if we are in winning form and miss out, it's better than the way we petered out last year.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think we're on the improve for now. And always an optimist with my football side, and we're there to support them. And this year and last year has really taught me how to be a better supporter. Famously, I was blocked by Zach Tui and then unblocked by Zach Tui on Twitter. This is when I was a bad supporter. I was younger and more foolish. Maybe he kicked the ball out of bounds, and I tweeted "Deport Tui," and I think through wit and general like being in the Carlton sphere, he unblocked me. Thank you, Zach. But I think now I'm a much better supporter, and I understand the woes of being a young athlete in Melbourne. And I appreciate the struggles that players might be going through much more. And yeah, I think we're all better, online citizens. And I think the club it's got a much better feel for the supporters. And there's no sort of like adversarial interactions with the club as what there used to be. I think the club kind of understands that they have to just play the straight man, and now we've got a variety of fans doing different things, and that's where we get our nourishment from. And yeah, it's a good time to be a bagger, and I think not only are the players learning how to be professional footballers, but the fans are learning how to appreciate the team properly and when to support them properly.
I'm so happy you said that and brought it up, because I'm all about this conversation. I totally agree with you. In last year and this year has taught me how to be a better supporter, no doubt. I think oftentimes we can get caught up in thinking that Melbourne's the only, or Australia is the only place on earth. And like for us, Melbourne footy is part of the culture. It's everything. There is a big bad world out there, and footy is relatively unknown to most people who don't live in Australia. So I think once that hit for me, probably when I was like 5 years ago, once that really hit for me, my whole outlook on footy, sport, athletes started changing. And then I think through this as well, the accountability came because you're on camera. It's like you're identifiable. Like there's no VL Turbo profile photo where you don't know who I am writing a comment. So yeah, I'm glad you brought it up. How do you experience, touch on the online space, touch on the evolution in the way that we engage away from the game online now?
I think it's pretty much indicative of how every online space has changed in recently. I mean, when I remember like in high school, there was, like everyone who supported footy, they were like, oh yeah, someone posted a meme on Big Footy, and so I remember I was big on Big Footy back, just after school, and then I got to actually meet some of those people in real life, like go to a training session, and I think maybe some Carlton supporters might know Thylacine, or as I know him, Mike. These are guys who had seen the 70s and 80s and seen all the success that we had, but it was still a pretty toxic environment online. Like, it was very adversarial, very point scoring, weird, creepy stalking kind of thing. And we even had like how weird was it that we had, I remember we used to see if Jordan Russell was actually had an online profile, and if he was stalking people, and randomly I remember one day Dylan Buckley blocked me off everything, and I was like, he doesn't even know me. How does he block me on multiple things? I remember now I'm 32, I was posting this kind of stuff when I was 20. And it's kind of funny now. Well, if I look back, I feel bad for everything. After a bad loss, if I said something in a public forum, I feel kind of bad, which I would never do again. And what it's become now, I think people are just learning how to interact online, and it's kind of it's kind of cowardly to put an anonymous opinion out there and putting your face to something and being accountable for the words you say, and also just being considerate of the players, because we have some people follow soccer teams and NBA teams, but these guys are a world away, and like you said, they've got millions and billions of supporters. If I tweet out Cristiano Ronaldo did so and so, court case is pending, he wouldn't care. But if I tweet Dylan Buckley can't kick for shit, I might see him at the store. So you've got to be considerate that these guys, even though we put them on a pedestal and we see them on TV, they're just they're 18, 20-year-old kids. I think that consideration piece has been a big one, growing older, and that whole humbling piece as well. And you said when you go overseas and you tell people, if you told someone about Carlton and the troubles they go through, they'd just be like, who cares?
You're like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, exactly. It's a whole different world. Literally in the space of not only 10 years, 5 years, 2 years, the online space has changed so much. I remember I may be a very pioneer of Blue Abroad. I was in Switzerland for my cousin's wedding. This is years ago, actually before the 2013 final. And I got a call from the Carlton media manager, Luca Ganano. And me and Luca went to the same high school, different years apart. But he knew me through Twitter. I was maybe one of 200 people on Twitter who supported Carlton, and posted a shit ton. And he called me in Switzerland. We're flying out a whole bunch of Carlton supporters to the last game against Port Adelaide at Amy Stadium. Do you want to go? And he called me 3 a.m. in Switzerland. And I'm like, I get back the day before we fly out. And yeah, it was just that was a euphoric thing as well. I probably should have mentioned that as my favorite Carlton time, because flying back with all the players, having just gone to finals, it was crazy. And that was probably the first time I realized that even though what I'm tweeting, I can have direct contact with those players, and they're just regular people. And sort of, my behavior online has changed quite a bit.
Yeah. I think also
super toxic.
No. I think also, I mean, you learn, and the reality is, I think for us, we were the guinea pigs of social media, because we were 14, 15, 16 when Facebook and Instagram, maybe a little bit older, came out. So I still remember at the start, it was like, what is happening? What is this? It's not real. It's just social media. I think now, 10 years later, I'm like, oh, fuck, this is all our documentation of what we did when we were alive one day when we're dead. And it's real words. And I think also the fact that we're probably older than most players that we watch now, it brings with it some just a better understanding and some better empathy.
Yeah, I think maybe a few years ago, a lot of people had parasocial relationships with the Carlton players, and maybe some of the young supporters do. But yeah, I think we're both in our early 30s, and now I have that sort of detachment from players. It's funny, do you remember old trade periods when a player would follow a club?
Yeah,
and you'd be able to see their recently posts. You're like, oh shit, Christian Jacks is coming to us, greatest day of my life. which didn't eventuate. But yeah, those kind of days are, looking back at it, were, at the forefront of AFL social media. Was really interesting.
Where do you think it all goes?
I think the players are still aware. Like they can't not be. I know a lot of them say they don't read the papers, but like the algorithm will push them this kind of content.
Yeah.
Like they've definitely. I'm sure they've contacted you directly, and you probably just don't advertise it, but they would definitely watch this kind of content. And some players are aware. Like Mark Murphy follows me. Nick Graham follows me. Michael Jamison. I've talked to him a fair bit. And so the players do have an awareness of the fan space, and they, it's just natural. But I can't imagine like you said, I'm a photographer part time, but I also work in banking.
Right.
And if I were doing my job in a stadium with 60,000 people watching and then writing about me all day, I would be an absolute mess. So yeah, it's very like I understand why the fan content and the social media space has to exist, but like yeah, I can't imagine being a professional athlete in Australia, especially like a rookie list player getting less than 100K a year. Like, what's the benefit? Like, if it would be so difficult. I think we've maybe Carlton supporters, because we have such great fan content and we have such a large presence online and in just regular day-to-day life. We have good perspective. We've got a variety of opinions, a diversity of supporters, and so we have a lot of perspective on how to support the club and the AFL in a wider sense.
Yeah. And this is where I try and remind the generation before who will, I got DMs from people who will call players cowards and gutless and then give me but I've seen 5 flags. I know what a mentally strong player is. And I'm like, none of those players had eyeballs on them and scrutiny on them every single time they stepped out of the house like the players do now. And if anything, if camera phones were out back then and they were doing what they were doing in the clubs after games and all of that, then it would be a different story.
Yeah, I don't think your Heat Scotlands would have survived for that long.
No. Yeah.
If the super nicest guy like Levi Casbolt came into the club with such scrutiny, you just know that no one's immune.
Yeah. So this group, how do you see it playing out? Like, how do you support? Like, are you on board with the journey we're on? Are you results based? How do you absorb it all?
I look at it from every angle possible. I have like I said, I've got a background in banking, so I've got a spreadsheet with every player statistic because I don't trust the club to release contract stuff. I don't trust the club to release injury stuff. So I track all this stuff myself. And yeah, I kind of I look at the structure of our list and our depth. I look at how we're planning with the age demographic. That's really important. But I'm not the greatest an analyzer of the intangibles of football. So I kind of do entrust like the powers that be with that. But I'm really interested in like the draft space. I think I have a pretty good eye for talent. And so like I've probably been watching under 18s and keeping like a cursory view over that kind of space for over a decade now, just because we've always had pick number 1 or within the top 3. And so yeah, I've really liked understanding the small things that make a good player good. And I think our current crop is very, our team is so balanced right now, to be honest. Yeah. If you look at what we need, we basically just need our injured players to stay fit. Like there's nothing that we're wanting for. If a Jack Martin can play 26 games in a year, we're set. If Cunningham, Gov, Marchie can stay fit, then Nick Austin's literally done his job. Just needs to replenish the list with talent every now and then. Whereas if you asked me 2 years ago when a former list manager was in charge, there was a lot of holes and it was really imbalanced in the salary cap. But I think at the moment the club is in a really good holistic position in that we have players with decent IQ. We have players who have experienced hardship, and I actually think that our players aren't as strong mentally as other clubs. I think we're somewhat fragile, but I think we've gone through so much shit that they now have a fear of being back where they are, and so that will probably drive them further than other people. And I just think that we have the most talented spine in the league. Well, one of the most talented, top three maybe. Like no one has a Charlie. Very few people have a Wiedering. Very few people have a Cripps. Very few people have a Walsh. And Harry Mackay. I think there's very little that we're wanting for, and we're in a place where we can launch. And I think I was so jaded about like the AFL media in the past, like the way they just criticized everything we did. But looking back, it's probably warranted. And getting that external praise now, even though it's really base level, like you've been talking about, Nick Newman for years now, or for the whole season, whereas now David King's like, gee, that Newman's all right, isn't he? Like, I think now that we're getting like the external plaudits, you're kind of understanding like, oh, okay, it's very obvious that we're getting into a good place.
Yeah, I guess because I create here on YouTube and I do my own content, I have found the way I link up with mainstream media has evolved so much. I used to yearn for the newspaper every day. I used to wait and just try and find a positive comment from mainstream to fill a void that they loved my team. And whereas now, like, I see the positive affirmations that we're getting at the moment from the media, and I'm like, this is all rubbish. This isn't even genuine. I don't even want to read. I don't care for their opinions anymore. And I don't know. I think maybe it could be in part because I create my own content as well, but I really don't link with the mainstream media like I used to watching footy.
I think I literally only watch like mainstream media when I have receipts and I want to enjoy them. Well, like if Craig Hutchison says we don't need Harry Mackay, and then if Harry kicks 5, I'll race to Footy Classified. The only time I'll watch it. Or if Kane Corn says something, and maybe I'll chuck on SEN in the morning after if we have a good win. That's probably the only time I'll tune into mainstream media now. Yeah, thank you. You've saved us from the Essendon cartel that's in Fox Footy. I don't have to listen to surly old Mark Robinson anymore.
Yeah, or Johnny Ralph with his Richmond agenda. Anyway, we'll get to him. All in good time. They will all fall one by one. So just before I let you go, I've got to ask the same question at the end. What year will we lift up the cup?
2024.
Yeah?
Well, if not now, never. I mean, I think we're almost where Collingwood was last year. Right. And I think we have a better list than Collingwood. I think Collingwood, up until the last little bit, have been superbly coached, and they have infinite resources. We don't have infinite resources, but we have a lot of resources. I just think in the next 3 years is probably our time to strike. Doc's in his prime, Newman's in his prime, Cripps is in his prime. Yeah, it's the best time to do it now.
Yeah, it's funny because the answer to that question 3 years ago when I started doing this was 2023, 2022, 2023, and then at the start of this year it was 2026, 2027. You're the first one to come back to 2024. So
you asked me 8 weeks ago, I would have said never. So the power of hindsight and opinions when we're winning is very different.
Yeah. Ali, it's been an absolute pleasure. I've really enjoyed this. Thank you so much for your time.
If I'm creeping at a training session next time, I'll come and say hi.
Yeah, come and say hi. Well, I know you now. I've seen you now, so we're good. Good.
Thanks, mate. Go Baggers.